They told the world Britain was too dangerous. They told the world security fears made a family visit impossible. They told the world the risks were simply too great. But now, suddenly, the very same family that supposedly could not step foot on British soil is preparing for a return. And buried underneath all the triumphant headlines sits one uncomfortable fact that changes everything. The security situation never changed. Not significantly, not dramatically, not in the way many headlines are now implying. So if the protection never changed, then what exactly did? That question is hanging over this entire story like a storm cloud nobody wants to acknowledge.
Harry's situation security-wise is 100% the way that it was before. Right? It's the same deal on a case-by-case basis. He's not going to be blue-lit going through anywhere. He's not going to be given special treatment.
Harry is deeply unpopular, and he has been whining about security for 5 years in a manner that does not endear him to anyone.
For years, Harry and Meghan presented the UK as unsafe, hostile, and impossible for their family without the security they wanted. I believe Meghan made that an ultimatum. Get the security that I want or I'm not coming to the UK.
Are the royal family now willing to come clean and admit that Harry and Meghan have lied to the entire United Kingdom? That is actually treason. That is fraud against the crown, guys.
Of course, she uses the children to control Harry like divorced parents often do. She has Harry terrified that if the kids met their relatives, they would like them or love them or want to go back.
Harry and Meghan Markle are in complete panic at the moment because they know that there's a lot hanging in the balance for them with these lies that they've told.
This is all just pantomime. It's just, wanted attention. And that really, one might suggest, is why Harry decided to push hard and fast to make sure that his wife got the security that he really, let me tell you, eats him up each time he sees the full motorcade for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Meghan dreamed of security, dreamed of screaming attention, and Harry gave it to her.
For years, the narrative felt simple. Britain unsafe, family at risk, doors closed. End of discussion. Yet now, a completely different picture is being painted. Suddenly, there are whispers of reconciliation, stories about royal residences, reports suggesting olive branches have been extended. Some headlines practically scream that everything has been fixed behind palace walls. But when you start comparing those reports, strange contradictions appear. One source suggests protection has somehow been restored. Another says absolutely nothing has changed. Both stories cannot exist in the same reality. One of them collapses under scrutiny. And that is where this mystery begins. The deeper you dig, the stranger it gets.
Either the UK was too dangerous before, or Harry is now realizing that staying completely disconnected from Britain is damaging his brand, damaging his credibility, his children's royal identity, and his long-term position.
Because beneath all the glowing language and emotional framing sits a much colder reality. The arrangements reportedly being discussed today look remarkably similar to the arrangements that already existed yesterday. Conditional, case by case, advance notice required, layers of review, committees making decisions, government bodies evaluating risk, not automatic protection, not permanent taxpayer-funded security, not the kind of royal treatment enjoyed by those still carrying frontline duties within the monarchy. The dramatic transformation being advertised suddenly starts looking suspiciously like the exact same package wrapped in shinier paper.
So here's where the media headlines are getting really squirrely. This is not a win for Harry. This is not a reversal of his clear, decisive legal defeats. It is simply a reassessment for security that has been conducted for the first time in about 5 years.
And that forces a question the headlines seem desperate to avoid. If nothing fundamentally changed, then why did the narrative change? Why does a country that was supposedly too dangerous last year suddenly appear acceptable now? Why does the same arrangement feel impossible in one moment and acceptable in the next? The answers don't seem to live inside security reports. They seem to live somewhere else entirely.
He's not going to be blue-lit going through anywhere. Is not going to be given special treatment from the moment he arrives, simply because he is the son of the reigning monarch. Then he will be afforded the same sort of downgraded security.
Watch the sequence carefully because patterns matter. First comes emotional language. Then comes a carefully managed public image. Then comes media excitement. Then come the stories about reconciliation, forgiveness, and fresh starts. Anyone who has followed royal drama for years has seen this rhythm before. before. It repeats so often it almost feels choreographed. The same cycle, the same headlines, the same speculation, different year, same pattern. Then there is the court case, the detail that refuses to disappear no matter how many fresh headlines appear on the front page. Because this wasn't merely a disagreement. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a legal battle, a direct challenge, an attempt to reverse a decision that had already been made. And the outcome was devastatingly clear.
And he lost that case, he appealed it, and he lost the appeal in spring 2025, leaving him with no other further legal action possible to take. Like, that was the full end of the story. He cannot sue again, basically.
That legal defeat matters because it punches a hole through the entire victory narrative being sold today. If the courts upheld the existing arrangements, if the downgrade remained in place, if the decision survived legal scrutiny, then where exactly is this dramatic change everyone keeps talking about? There has been no explosive reversal, no earth-shattering announcement, no revolutionary new policy. The same framework still exists. The same rules still stand. The same conditions still apply. Suddenly, the headlines start looking less like a breakthrough and more like a public relations exercise. Because once you remember what happened in court, the story becomes much harder to sell. The supposed victory starts sounding suspiciously similar to a defeat being repackaged for a second audience. And that is where many royal watchers believe the real battle is taking place.
A lot of you remember that Harry sued the government. This is the appeal judgment. The judge went over every single visit that Harry had to the United Kingdom, accompanied or alone, and whoever accompanied him was described in each visit.
Not inside security meetings, not inside government offices, but inside the public narrative itself. The palace understands narratives. The Sussex camp understands narratives. The media certainly understands narratives. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise sits the public trying to figure out what is actually true. Was there really a dramatic breakthrough? Or are people watching old arrangements being presented as new developments? The answer becomes even more fascinating when another uncomfortable fact enters the conversation. The king himself reportedly does not control the decision everyone keeps blaming or praising him for. That is the detail that turns this entire story upside down. Because if the king cannot personally grant the protection being discussed, then the popular narrative begins falling apart piece by piece. Suddenly, the image of a monarch dramatically changing the rules starts looking more like a convenient fantasy than reality. And once that realization settles in, an even bigger question emerges. If the security never truly changed, if the court decision still stands, and if the king's power over the matter has been widely exaggerated, then why are these headlines appearing right now? Why this moment? Why this timing? And who benefits most from the public believing that a major royal breakthrough has finally happened? And that is where the story stops being about security and starts becoming about access. Because when you strip away the dramatic headlines, what appears to be sitting on the table is not some grand restoration of status. It's accommodation, a place to stay, a temporary arrangement, and that distinction matters more than most people realize. The headlines want you looking at the welcome. The real story might be hidden inside the limits of that welcome, because a guest room and unrestricted access are not the same thing, not even close. The detail many observers keep returning to is what isn't being offered, not the residences that once symbolized independence, not the arrangements that allowed complete freedom of movement, not the setup that existed before. Those doors appear to remain firmly closed, and that silence speaks volumes. In royal circles, what isn't offered can sometimes be more revealing than what is. The difference between being invited and being reinstated is enormous, yet many headlines blur that distinction until it almost disappears. Then comes the timing that immediately set alarm bells ringing among royal watchers, because this announcement didn't arrive in isolation. It landed in the middle of a period when public attention was already focused elsewhere. Cameras were locked onto senior royals. Positive headlines were circulating. Public appearances were generating discussion. Then suddenly another narrative arrived demanding equal attention. Coincidence? Maybe, but after years of watching royal media battles unfold, many people no longer believe in coincidences when it comes to headline timing. The pattern feels painfully familiar to critics. A major Wills moment emerges. Public interest begins building. Then another Sussex-related development appears and instantly shifts the conversation. Different event, different year, same accusations, same questions, same suspicion that somebody somewhere understands exactly how media cycles work and exactly when to drop a story for maximum impact. But beneath all the family tension sits something even more sensitive: Invictus, the event at the center of this entire discussion, the reason for the visit, the cause that was always supposed to remain bigger than any individual personality. And yet that is precisely where the controversy becomes most uncomfortable, because critics keep asking a question that refuses to go away. When cameras arrive, who becomes the story? The veterans or the famous faces standing beside them? That question has become increasingly difficult to ignore. Invictus was built to celebrate resilience, sacrifice, recovery, and determination. It was designed to shine a spotlight on wounded servicemen and women rebuilding their lives. Yet every time royal drama enters the equation, the headlines seem to drift elsewhere. Suddenly, conversations become dominated by family feuds, security disputes, reunion rumors, and public appearances. The athletes risk becoming supporting characters in their own story. Then there is the financial scrutiny, the growing demand from some critics for greater transparency. Questions about travel, arrangements, publicity, and associated costs continue surfacing whenever major appearances are discussed. Whether fair or unfair, those concerns have become part of the conversation. And once public questions begin circulating, they rarely disappear completely. Instead, they grow louder, gathering momentum with every new headline. Yet perhaps the most fascinating mystery of all surrounds one person: Meghan. Because beneath the confident reporting sits remarkable uncertainty. For all the claims that plans are settled, for all the reports suggesting a united family return, many observers remain unconvinced. They've watched this cycle before. The speculation, the anticipation, the endless will they or won't they coverage. The headlines arrive first. The confirmation often comes later, sometimes much later. That uncertainty is what keeps this entire story alive, because until the plane lands, everything remains fluid. Every report can be challenged by another report. Every certainty can be contradicted by a new source. And in that confusion, media attention continues flowing exactly where it has always flowed, which brings us back to the original question. If security never truly changed, why did the narrative change? Perhaps the answer has never been about protection at all. Perhaps it has been about perception, about headlines, about timing, about public image, about keeping a story alive long enough to dominate another news cycle. And that is why this saga remains far from over. Because the real test isn't the announcement. It isn't the rumors. It isn't the carefully crafted headlines. The real test is what happens next. Who actually arrives? Who stays away? Who ends up dominating the coverage? And whether the gap between promise and reality becomes impossible to ignore once again. Until then, the questions remain unanswered, the speculation keeps growing, and somewhere behind the palace walls, the next chapter may already be quietly unfolding.